good.
Pontiac City Council for April 26, 2021 is now in session. Roll call, please.
Council President, Mr. Arcaro,
Present.
Mr. Emery,
Here.
Mr. Goff,
He might have an audio problem, but he did.
I think he did, yes. Mr. Kozeski,
Here.
Mrs. Ledford. Here. Mrs. McVoy's not on. Mr. Moiseo,
Here.
City Manager, Mr. Hockaday,
Present.
Finance Director, Mr. Williams,
Here.
Law Director, Mr. Smith.
Here. Hey, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There she is.
Angel just joined.
Next up is approval of the meeting minutes for April 12th, 2021. Are there any alterations or corrections? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff. I think he said yes. Mr. Kozeski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy,
yes,
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, the meeting minutes for April 12th, 2021 have been approved. We have an awards presentation tonight, and with us in council chambers tonight is Melanie Shubatowski, who is our Employee of the Month. Can you come up?
Where'd you go?
The employee for the month of April is Melanie Shubatowski. Melanie began working as an inspector in the Planning and Zoning Department in 2014. Melanie has a strong desire to help people and aims to improve the city of Conneaut in any way possible. As part of her never-ending list of duties, Melanie performs rental inspections, inspects vacant properties, enforces the property maintenance code, drafts countless letters, conducts administrative search warrants, maintains a mow list for grass violations, reviews applications and issues demolition permits, as well as various other zoning permits, and all while interacting and working closely with members of the public and other city departments. Melanie also acts as clerk to the Board of Zoning Appeals and the Planning Commission. As Melanie plans to retire from her position with the city in July, the city owes her our deepest gratitude and appreciation for the hard work and dedication she has so tirelessly exhibited for the safety and welfare of the residents of the city of Conneaut. Signed, John Arcaro, Council President, Terry Moiseo, Council Member, and dated this day of April 26, 2021.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much for your service.
Yes, absolutely.
congratulations.
Hey, thanks for coming up.
Good job, Melanie. Congratulations. Thank you so much. Welcome.
Congratulations. Take care. Okay, next up, we have citizen comments. Does anybody have any citizen comments? Okay, hearing none, communications.
I have two this evening. Two notices from the Ohio Division of Liquor Control. One is a transfer of a permit from Brenda and Hema Inc., DBA M&R Food Mart, to Cantini's Shoreline Beverage Inc., DBA M&R Food Mart. And also a notice of a new permit application for Albert A. Casito III, DBA Casito's Trackside at 438 Chestnut Street. That is all.
Okay, thank you. Does council have any communications? Hearing none, move on to reports for our administration, beginning with the city manager.
Thank you, Council President Arcaro. A lot to catch up on here. Over the past couple of weeks, we did have our CDBG, what is known as the Community Development Implementation Strategy, or CDIS meeting. This is where we talk about the upcoming or forthcoming project applications that the city could offer its intent to apply for CDBG funds. We did have two major projects that we submitted for consideration to get on that list. The first is the Broad Street Revitalization Project. This is the corridor project from State to Jackson that's going to be replaced as part of the ODOT Small City Project, but also integrating in a portion of Madison Street, as well as the Conneaut Public Library and some of the things that we've previously discussed there. And the other is the Harbor District Revitalization Project. And as you all know, we have a lot of great things happening in that little harbor area. And we may very likely need some improvements, parking areas, water line upgrades, et cetera. So we'll be nominating both those projects for competitive round application consideration in this next fiscal year for CDBG. We also had a Dominion pre-construction meeting. This is for Dominion's phase 2, and we will be working on getting an agreement for any open road cuts. This is from Stadium Drive to Harbor. We've previously discussed this, but I'm going to pull this up on the screen share if I can. Quickly. And so coming here. So this is the project area as stated, and hopefully those who are viewing from home here can kind of see what's going on. So the project area, again, is from the Spark Complex Stadium Drive area over to Harbor Street. There are a couple little spurs that will pull off on Main and Liberty and heading north on some of these other streets. This was originally supposed to be phase 1. Dominion flopped them. They're working on the section from Parish to Gore. Right now, they'll be wrapping that project up here in the coming weeks. Once they are clear from that site, that will go right into ODOT's project as well as the city's waterline project in that same area. While they're doing that, Dominion's going to be moving east to this segment here. I can kind of go through the panels. I'll try and go through them one by one in detail. Most of this will happen not by, as you've seen, not by open trench, but by boring. This is a smaller diameter line than the one they're working on now. So as you can see, there's some little T's that come off on some of these various side streets where they'll come in. I know one of the questions that I fielded already was Main Street, where it was resurfaced. Most of that work is going to be tree lawn work. If there are any road cuts, they should be absolutely minimal. Right now, we don't anticipate any on that Main Street section, which was resurfaced. These are generic sets of plans here, so they're just trying to show you the extent. So Main Street down to School at the intersection there. So they're just picking up some of those spurs that come down. I have full plans and drawings. I will email those out to council. These public information documents are going to be posted. I believe they are in their final permitting stages with ODOT, as well as any of their other environmental permits that they're required to get that would affect tree work or anything like that. So, so far I don't anticipate a lot. The one thing that I will share with you as far as the sidewalk details. So Since they'll be doing most of this in the tree lawn and sidewalk areas, all sidewalk panels are going to be required to go to full restoration if they're affected panels, and they will be put back at the ODOT spec, so it isn't redundant. So if in affected areas, they may be done by the time ODOT comes in to do the curb work. So we are just giving them that set in detail. Hopefully there isn't too much redundant pour in, tear out, though there could be, depending on what needs to be done, if there's a grade change or a stormwater catchment basin or something in the street that is affected in the ODOT project where that panel has to come out. The other thing is we just want to ensure to residents that it's not going to be a temporary restoration. It'll be a full restoration. So there isn't going to be like a panel that's knocked out that's going to sit in gravel for a year or something like that. They will complete full restoration this year. So right now this is scale. It will come to council just like we did in the first meeting. We can cover it again additionally at the work session if council has specific questions. I did send this document out to all of council so you have it. And we will probably bring that forward on the first meeting in May. So, all right. Do you have any questions that I can answer on it right now while we have it up and open, or before we review it in full depth at the May work session? It's going to be construction barrel year this year, just in
For
case
sure.
anybody was wondering.
That's a good
So,
thing.
progress. It's progress.
Exactly.
So these are some very old lines, and I'm actually happy to see them get replaced. These are significant assets for Dominion, and to see them get restored is nice. So we had a Ohio EPA hearing on the Norfolk and Southern Bridge Replacement Project. I know Council President Arcaro was on that. I don't remember everybody who was on it, but there were some representatives from Metro Parks, the city. I know a couple of affected residents and businesses were also online. It was an opportunity for them to preview their application to the state of Ohio. I wouldn't say there were significant comments, but there were numerous comments placed in there, both by the city as well as Metro Parks and other impacted parties. Norfolk and Southern will then be given, I believe, 30 days to respond to those questions specifically in writing back as part of their due diligence and part of their application process. One of the things that struck me, because we haven't had any direct communication from Norfolk and Southern about this replacement project, is they did indicate in their plans that they intended to use Old Main Road as their primary access point to drop in a temporary road on the east side of the riverbank and to go out and do their work. And they're also planning on partially damming Conneaut Creek during that period of time. There were a lot of questions we asked, how long it'll be closed? Will it be closed for river traffic, for kayakers and canoers and other outdoor enthusiasts, fishermen? So we're trying to get the answers to some of those questions. Of course, it's hard to know if they haven't shared that information to the public yet. Certainly, we have concerns about weight rating in Old Main Road and how much material they're planning on bringing in and out that residential street as an access point. And certainly they would need to talk to the city for that usage. So we did ask all those questions. You're allowed to ask any of those questions, whether they're social, economic, environmental, any kind of adverse impact. Questions can still be received by the Ohio EPA, and the posting is on the front page of the city website with directions as to how you would submit a question. So if you're interested in submitting a question in writing, you are able to submit your question until April 29th at 5 p.m. And like I said, the directions and links as to how to submit your questions are linked on the front page in the notices section of the city website. So I would encourage people, whether they're residents, whether they're business owners, whether they're just interested, if they do have questions, please put your question in writing, and they are required to respond in writing to your question. So as soon as this process continues, the other thing that was indicated in the application in terms of a construction timeline they suggested that as soon as permits were available for this project, they would like to begin. So the longest, I believe the Ohio EPA indicated that this hearing portion would go on for their portion of the permit would be end of July. And I have heard them previously state that third quarter this year was the target start date for them. And my understanding is that total construction project is estimated to take a period of no less than 2 years. So that's all the information I have. If folks do have a question, again, I'd encourage you to submit. I believe the city submitted during the session the questions that we wanted responses to. If we have any others, certainly, or have any others from council, I'm happy to submit those on the city's behalf. We've had a number of our little harbor planning meetings. We have our third scheduled coming up here. I did send out to council the agenda for the next meeting, so you can take a look at some of the content and items therein. And I did also want to indicate that the Asheville County Master Planning is still underway, and we can move that planning session. We've submitted all of our previous plans as well as current and developing plans within the city of Conneaut to be included and incorporated to Asheville County's comprehensive plan as well. So we have continued to participate in those. I jumped down a little bit. The COVID vaccines, I'm fibbing a little bit. We were 4,997 Conneaut vaccines to date. I rounded up to 5,000. I gave them the grace of 3. But I think that's a great number. Again, I'm very proud of what our health department's been able to accomplish. I would offer a word of caution. We have seen increased cases over the last couple of weeks. I believe last time I reported we were at 25. We're at 20 right now with 1 presently hospitalized. So that's a bad trend. It's a bad trend line. We have gotten a couple of wastewater treatment plant alerts and notices over the past several weeks. I would encourage people, whether you've been vaccinated, whether you think it's just getting warmer outside and it's okay to be in close contact with others, wear a mask, wash your hands, follow the guidelines and all the things that we've been saying for over a year now. And let's get this nipped in the bud here before summertime so we can return to some normalcy this summer. Another thing that I wanted to point out to you is we did our stabilization project of Dorman Road. This was kind of a test or a pilot project for us. We've been stockpiling the asphalt grindings from our last several citywide street paving projects in years. We were able to save up a couple thousand tons of asphalt grindings. This is a little bit of a new process for us. So what happens is we take the asphalt grindings, they're re-crushed, and then we simply spread them on the road. Then a company, in this case by the name of Symbase, brings in a big grinder. It lifts up the top 10 inches of the road. It incorporates a Portland cement into the soil, and it regrinds the asphalt grindings into the base itself. As it draws moisture in, it will harden and stiffen and stabilize the road, and then it will be chip sealed. So Dorman was stabilized last week. We are intending to have our it's a single course of chip seal to seal the road. It's a prime coat and chip seal just to seal it up. That will be done tomorrow, weather permitting. And then we'll have some berm and driveway restoration work that will happen with our crews later on this week. So I think we're going to be happy with it. Again, we're testing out a new process. It is dramatically cheaper than bringing in aggregates, putting down a base course of asphalt. And we're hoping on some of these lower traffic roads that this will be a cheaper alternative to paving, full out asphalt paving. And we will be able to seal up some of these roads so they're no longer dirt roads. So we're happy that we're getting to the point where we can try this. And like I said, I'm optimistic. Our cost ratio, just so you know, is about 1/8 of what it would cost to pave the road under a traditional method. So this could be something promising. Either way, Dorman Road will look better at the end. It is a little higher traffic there by the schools. The only thing that was a little more difficult on Dorman Road that we typically don't have on most of our roads is there are manhole castings in that road. So one of the things our crews did in kind on this project was we did all the manhole adjustments and casting adjustments in the road. So we used a lot of our internal crews for this project, and I think it'll be a great result. So hopefully by the end of this week, you'll be able to take a drive out there and check out a semi-finished product, even though there might still be some berm work and restoration work that'll need to occur. One piece of news that I want to make you aware of: in our water filtration plant, we did receive a violation. Our violation was for the harmful algal bloom sampling. This is the microcystins test. Algal blooms are not prevalent this time of year, but what happened is the samples were taken, they were shipped to the lab via FedEx, and they were destroyed mid-shipment. You have a period of 3 days to submit those samples to the testing agency and reporting out to the state of Ohio. And of course, by the time they were damaged and brought back to us, damaged by FedEx, the 3 days had elapsed. It's unfortunate. I don't believe there was any risk to anybody. As I said, microcystins and harmful algal blooms are not something that even occur this time of year, but our drinking water permit does require our testing of it. Everybody will get a notice of it. I have no problem stating that I believe there's zero danger to anybody in the public, because we've never had a test this time of year. Typically, when we see harmful algal blooms, will actually be late August to early September, after sediment has been introduced to Lake Erie via washouts and dredging and other activities, and then the hot summer sun's been pouring down on it. So that's unfortunate, but I did want to make council aware of that, and that notice of violation has been copied and produced, and it will be sent out to every customer as required. I don't know what we could really do to avert that in the future. It is sent a high priority FedEx to the lab, so it's just unfortunate. So I just wanted to make you aware of it. So when residents do get their notice, they go, "What's going on with my drinking water?" You can share that information. But I don't think there was any overt hazard to anybody. It's just we did not meet that parameter of getting a sample there within 3 days for testing.
So just to clarify, they didn't really sample our water. It just didn't. It got destroyed and didn't make it. So we got.
Yeah, we didn't get fined.
Fined,
We don't
but
get fined.
dinged, I guess.
Yeah, we get cited for not submitting the sample in a
Because it
timely
just
fashion.
wasn't submitted. So
We-
it wasn't anything that they detected in the water, it's just because we didn't submit it on time.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And the sample was taken and it was shipped out, but by the time it was damaged in transit and
Right.
brought back to us, we immediately called and reported it to the EPA. We were hoping we wouldn't be cited for that, but it's just the way it is. So,
Okay.
I know Rich Neubauer was not a happy camper about
Oh,
it,
I'm
but
sure.
that's the way the cookie crumbles. So I just wanted to make sure before the required notices are sent out that you all are aware of it. I don't think it's a major issue, but it happened. The other two things I'm going to touch on real quickly, and then I know John's got a presentation, is we did receive our bid tabulations for our two projects that were out to bid. They are on tonight's council agenda. So here's the first one, and this is the West Main US Route 20 Waterline Phase 2. This is largely a boring project that will curb from Gore to Parish Road, our favorite section of road. And we had a number of bidders. We were very happy with this. We did beat The estimate significantly, our estimate was $540,000, and Klingensmith Construction of Conneaut Lake came in lowest at a little bit under $390,000. So I've never worked with them directly, but I have heard good things, and certainly CT has submitted a letter recommending your acceptance of their bid. The other is Chestnut Phase 2. This is a little bit larger project. And here's your list of totals. Severino Construction came in lowest at 602, followed by Merchant Gaffney and SET Excavating. This too was significantly under our estimated construction price of $700,000. So that is the estimate 2. CT has recommended acceptance of the low bidder. Else. Those are my last 2 things. So,
Good. Any questions for the city manager?
Mr. Carroll, I just have one. As far as for Dorman Road, we're going to be able potentially down the road to maybe look at some other smaller sections in the southern roads, Middle Road,
Yes.
Under Ridge, those type of areas.
yes.
Good.
And after speaking with our public works director, the 2 that kind of jump out as difficult to maintain roads, and we used about half of the grindings that we had on hand, probably a little over half, just on the Dorman section. The Dorman section, just for the record, is approximately 1 mile in length, 20 foot wide. And I think that was about a little over 2,000 tons of grindings that we placed down on the road for incorporation. So it takes a significant amount of raw material to come up to that level. So about 2,000 tons a mile. We have about another 2,000 tons available, give or take. So the next 2 that we would target would probably be Creek Road, and then also Kephis, where they cross the river. Because of their slope issues, they're very difficult to keep maintained without rutting and washout down the face of the road. They're a little higher traffic because they are down by the creek, and certainly the covered bridge. That's a little more difficult to maintain. If this is a process we want to continue to consider, we would love it. Nobody more than Public Works would love to get rid of some of these gravel roads and get them into a chip seal. It's far easier to maintain. I think it'd make everybody happier. And if we can do it this way, I think this is a very cost-effective method for us to do it. Obviously, Dorman's probably the most challenging because of all the infrastructure that's actually laid in with there's water lines, water mains, manholes, fiber optic, everything on earth is in Dorman Road. So it was a little difficult to work with some of that larger machinery. As we got further out in some of the southern roads, like a South Ridge or an Under Ridge Road, doing those, it'd actually be a much faster project because there's no infrastructure laid in the roadbed itself. So you can kind of go a lot more quickly.
And were you able to open up a dialogue?
Yes.
with ODOT on,
Yes. Well, so in the current, for the Route 20 project, obviously the lion's share of the millings would come up in 2022. So we're discussing with the contractor if we can acquire a portion of those grindings or all of those grindings. We have started those conversations, and they're open to working with us. Obviously, it would still be at some cost, but likely a lot cheaper than buying aggregate or something else to place in the road for that stabilization process. So I will keep you informed, and hopefully we'll have something to bring to council by that May 4th meeting. I don't want to make any promises I can't keep, but we are discussing it with them.
okay, as long as we have broached the subject. Okay. Any other questions for the city manager? No, move on to the finance director, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Arcaro. Was that the only sheet you had, Jim, or did you?
No, I
the
have
other?
both.
Okay, I was going to go over that part first. If you wanted to put that up there, I don't know. Every year, the Ohio State Auditor takes the numbers from our financial reports, our CAF or our GAAP financials, and they present those numbers in a spreadsheet, in a report that basically identifies 17 financial health indicators. And so what they're looking at is they're trying to project or predict financial stability, and they want to recognize early signs of financial stress. 16 of the indicators are based upon the financials, and the 17th is based upon citations or recommendations that they've had in the prior year. And no one indicator is a sign of financial distress. It's taken in combination. So if you look at the towards the bottom, it says entities experience fiscal distress when at least 6 critical red flag financial health indicators are reflected, or 8 critical and or cautionary yellow financial health indicators are reflected. If you look at the very top, you can see we have 2 cautionary and 1 critical. The one that is critical has been critical for 5 years. At the end of the report, you can see a 5-year history of all of these from, I believe, from 2015 through 2019. Right now, we have 14 of the 17 are positive. Number 1 and number 2, excuse me, number 1 and number 2, they turned positive this year, as did number 9. They were cautionary last year. So 1 and 2 that turned positive this year were the unrestricted net assets and position, and the unassigned fund balance in the general fund that also turned positive. The cautionary, and you can go through these, but I didn't want to spend too much time on the detail because it is quite extensive. But number 5 is the cautionary outlook. This is the total general fund balance in comparison to general fund revenues, and then the general fund balance, total general fund balance versus general fund revenues. Basically, this is what your reserve is what you're looking at. You can see that declining trend from 2016 from 40% down to just over 20%. The critical benchmark is close to probably 5%, 4%, and then the cautionary is a little bit higher than that. But what they're looking at is the change in revenues for the 3 years prior. And if you look at those little dark blocks, you can see from 2016, you can see the decline trend of 2018, and it's a little bit better in 2019, but it's still cautionary. The number 8, the critical outlook, this is the percentage of general fund revenues that exceed general fund expenditures. But it's also the it's an indication of an operating deficit. So if you look at the critical outlook benchmark, which is at 0 and then 5%, we're well below that. We're at a negative 10% this year. So that is a critical outlook, but as I said, that's been critical for a number of years. But I think we still have sufficient fund balances, but they're just saying that needs to be watched. So, and then number 9, that turned positive this year. That's general fund revenues versus net expenses. And you can see the ratio has gone from 2016 to about 70% up to 160% for 2019. So, and then there's also the other cautionary outlook is the condition of capital assets. We're somewhere between 50 and 70%. Critical is greater than 70%. So it's the accumulated depreciation on your assets. It's basically looking at the age of your assets. And they're saying that right now it's at a cautionary point. So, and then number 17 is budgetary non-compliance. As you can see, we have not had any citations, so there's nothing there as far as anything negative, so it is a positive outlook. Now, the spreadsheet is a little bit more detail, and it'll have the numbers on top on the spreadsheet, numbers 1 through number 16, because 17 is just based upon citation. So each one of those financial health indicators that you're looking at, say number 1, you can see the number 1 at the very top Number 2 is associated with the unassigned fund balance in the general fund and et cetera. So you can go through each one of those numbers and there's a description as to what it is. And then if you look at the very bottom that I have highlighted in red, there are numbers that are in brackets. Each one of those numbers in brackets is associated with a number on that second set of numbers. So if you look at number 1, it says net position, unrestricted deficit loss, pension, and other benefits. That is associated with number 1, and then go down to number 2. Number 2 is on the second page under total pension and other employment-related benefits. So you can get a little bit more detail as to what's contained in this report based upon the numbers. So it'll take you a little while to get through it, but I just wanted to give you an overview of it. As I said, this is done every year. I think we're still in pretty good shape. We obviously are trying to work on the general fund balance issues. Sometimes it just ebbs and flows. Some years we use more fund balance, some years we don't. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, or if you want to look at it and ask me later, that'd be fine too.
So how do you feel overall? I mean, I think it's good that some of those increased, like went up.
Right.
What were cautionary are now positive. So
Yeah.
that's a real good.
It is. So as I said, on page 10, it'll give you the history
Yeah.
there. So yeah, I feel good about that. Obviously, I don't feel as good about number 8. It's been critical for probably 10 years. You know what I mean? So, but that's just one indicator. And as it says in here, you usually have to get 6, 7, 8, either critical or cautionary to really indicate some form of financial distress. And I don't think we're anywhere near there.
Right.
But it's just a nice overview of what's contained in our financial statements. Because if you look at our financial report, it's a couple hundred pages long.
Yeah.
This kind of condenses those things into giving you a picture of the city's financial health based upon those audited numbers.
Excellent.
And it's a really good report. And
It is.
if anybody that's watching wants to look at both of these reports, you can go to the Ohio State Auditor's website and you just type in financial health indicators and pick your community, and you can look at any community. You can look at Ashtabula, Geneva, Cleveland. Anybody that files a GAAP report will be on that site. So
That's the state audit. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
No, I'm sorry. No, you're
That's
fine.
the
the
Ohio-
state auditor.
Ohio State Auditor. I think it's ohioauditor.gov, but if you just type in your search bar Ohio State Auditor, it'll bring it up.
So these are a year behind, these GAAP reports.
We're always a year behind because right now we're being audited for 2020. Now that audited report won't be available until June 30th. And then that report won't be approved till probably August of this year for 2020. So you're always a year and a half behind. And I think they were even later this year because of COVID. We submitted our report to the GFOA. We just got our results back from the Government Finance Officers Association back in March. So, it took them that long to go through the report.
So I'm making the assumption for 2020 then that they'll take into account CARES Act funding and those type of funds that may have been affected by all the health restrictions and so on and so forth.
Correct. Yep, that will definitely be reflected in our auditor report.
It's also important to remember some of these things move inversely. So you have condition of capital assets, which is yellow. But when you spend and you finance some of those
Right.
improvements, it adds to indebtedness. So you can take one category to green and drop the other
Right.
one to yellow.
Right.
So, it's a moving trend line that they're looking at.
Yeah, and if you notice, everything in there is trend. Everything's a 3 or 4 year or 5 year trend. So
Very good.
Anybody have any questions for the finance director? Thank you, Mr. Williams. Okay, moving on to the law director, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. We've been working this last several months actually with the city manager on issues involving the Eastside Industrial Park and the facilities leased with Truck World. We are continuing to address and make recommendations to planning and zoning regarding, and the Planning Commission regarding site plans, parking lots, chickens, home occupations, bed and breakfasts, and other things that keep coming up. It's probably been, I think we decided almost 50 years since anyone really reviewed the zoning code. And as we start to try to enforce things, we're finding ways we can improve and streamline and make it easier to address some of these issues that come up. In this regard, I want to thank council again for funding the position of the assistant planning and zoning manager, Molly, who also works part-time in our office. What this has done is it's just engendered, I'd call it an unparalleled communication between planning and zoning, code enforcement, and our office. And we're really starting to get some things moving. We'll be bringing those to planning and also to council at some point in the future. But it's been very good. And we've also been working with the police department also on some of this as well. So I think that's been a really positive thing. We are still working on closing the Cashin and the Key Bank sale. The Key Bank sale has been dragging on for several months as different lawyers get involved with the bank. And I think we're close to closing, hopefully by the end of the month on Key Bank, but it's been a real struggle and some real snafus. We are working, we just started working with the health department and the wastewater treatment plant to address a growing problem of failing septic tanks on Lake Road. And we'll be trying to tackle that project. Our office has secured mortgage releases for 2 of the parcels now in the Eastside Industrial Park. As you're aware, there's a Department of Development mortgage with an outstanding balance of about $180,000. And in order to engage in the sale and transfer of these parcels, we're able to secure a mortgage release without coming up with any money to pay the mortgage release. So we're very pleased about that. And finally, we're reviewing issues with the lease purchase for Port Authority vehicles between the city and Huntington Bank. We'll have something for you on that for the next meeting.
Thank you. Any questions for the law director?
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you.
If not, move on to reports of our standing committees. Does anybody have a committee report? Okay, hearing none. Liaison reports.
I don't have a report, but we are working on a date for a joint meeting with the Board of Education. So everybody look for that to come out relatively soon.
Okay. And I do have a Port Authority report as they're beginning to make preparations to open up next month. And I will submit that into the record. Hey, any other liaison reports? Okay, hearing none, move on to our ordinances and resolutions this evening. We have 2 ordinances on the table. Mr. Hockaday, is there any update on 8820?
The first has not changed.
Okay. And Mr. Smith, is there any update on 1921?
No, we'll have that for you at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. So those 2 will remain on the table. We have 1 ordinance in second reading. Mr. Williams, are we ready to proceed with that?
If we could move this to a third reading,
Okay,
I'd appreciate it.
so it'll be moved to third reading on ordinance 2221. And then we have 3 ordinances to consider in first reading, and we will begin with ordinance 2321.
An ordinance to authorize the city manager to award the bid and enter into contract with Kling & Smith Enterprises, Inc. for the West Main Waterline Phase 2 project at a price not to exceed $389,123.25 and declaring it an emergency.
Okay, you did hear the city manager in his report regarding this ordinance. So I'll entertain a motion to proceed.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Arcaro, to declare ordinance 2321 an emergency.
There's a motion to declare ordinance 2321 an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Ledford?
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah? You say yes. Mr. Gah?
Looks like,
Is he muted or is there a technical problem?
I don't know if his microphone volume's up. We're not hearing you, Rick, just so you know.
Can you bring that screen back up so
Yep,
we
I
can
can.
see his verbal language?
Yeah.
Okay.
There we go.
Thumbed up.
There we go.
Mr. Kozeski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
yes.
Hey, Mr. Moiseo, the emergency has been declared.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 23-21.
The motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 2321. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Ledford?
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah? Mr. Kozeski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Hey, Mr. Moiseo, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
I'd like to make a motion to act on ordinance 23-21.
Motion to act on ordinance 2321. Is there a second?
I second.
Mr. Emery?
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Gah? Mr. Kozeski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2321 is passed. Move on to ordinance 2421.
An ordinance to authorize the city manager to award the bid and enter into contract with J. Severino Construction, Inc. for the Chestnut Street Stormwater Project Phase 3 at a price not to exceed $602,730.80 and declaring an emergency.
Okay, again, you heard the city manager's report regarding this ordinance. Is there a motion to proceed?
I'll make a motion to declare ordinance 24-21 an emergency.
There's a motion to declare ordinance 2421 an emergency. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Moiseo.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah? Mr. Gah? Mr. Kozeski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Hey, Mrs. Ledford, the emergency has been declared.
This time I'd like to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 24-21.
So motion to suspend a 3 reading rule on ordinance 2421. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Moiseo.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozeski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Hey, Mrs. Ledford, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
this time, I'd like to act on ordinance 24-21, please.
There's a motion to act on ordinance 2421. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Moiseo.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy?
yes,
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2421 is passed. Move on to resolution 2521.
A resolution to show appreciation for the outstanding service of the Conneaut Health Department and opposing substitute House Bill 110, a portion of which aims to abolish health districts in cities with populations of less than 50,000.
Hey, Mr. Hockaday.
Well, I want to spend a little bit of time on this. This House Bill 110, there's been some language inserted in their Finance Committee that would abolish all of the health departments that serve communities of 50,000 or less within the state of Ohio. Interestingly, that is not very many counties that it would affect, and the affected counties would be Ashtabula, Butler, Columbiana, Coshocton, Crawford, Hamilton, Mahoning, Miami, Montgomery, Morrow, Portage, Richland, Scioto, Stark, Trumbull, Tuscarawas, and Washington counties. So most of those tend to represent rural counties that might have a smaller mid-sized community that's less than that 50,000, but still a substantial population. In Ashtabula County, there would be two such health districts that would be affected, obviously, the Conneaut Health Department and the Ashtabula City Health Department. And that way, it would roll the services that are provided by those agencies and take their responsibilities and hand them to the Ashtabula County Health Department. You know, in the year immediately succeeding or in the middle of
Right.
a global health pandemic in which those health departments have had not even a tertiary or secondary role, but a primary role in protecting communities and vaccinating those populations. This is almost unimaginable language. Not to mention, we are at the conclusion of our certification process for our health department, which was a recent requirement within the last 5 years that they go through that accreditation process. And the city of Conneaut and the Conneaut Health Department have spent a large sum of money achieving accreditation for our health department. This would be a significant blow, not only to the city of Conneaut, its residents, but I think Ashtabula City and Ashtabula County as a whole. This is just a terrible thought, and I don't know if this comes predominantly from state legislators seeking to roll back the authority of the governor, and this is just jet wash from that general political fight that they're having over creating rules. But I would remind people that health departments do a great deal more than just dealing with issues of global pandemics and vaccinations and health orders and so on and so forth. Yes, they do enforce health orders, but they also do prenatal vaccinations, prenatal checkups for expectant mothers, particularly in a distressed community like ours. When they do not have any other outlet for those services, our health department provides those. Most people forget that it's critical in areas of development, areas that require septic tanks. While Conneaut, most of it is sewered, certainly not all of it is. And they perform those inspections. They perform, all that building and development criteria for local new residential homes and commercial establishments, everybody that has a food license. So when the state of Ohio changed the food license and the serve safe requirements in the state of Ohio, our health department, with sponsorship from the city, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Conneaut Port Authority, held local classes where restaurants here in Conneaut could send their employees that all then had to have recertifications on Serve Safe. if those get collapsed, then your employees may have to go to Jefferson, or they may have to go further than that. All of our vital statistics, birth and death certificates provided locally, all of those assets and all of those responsibilities would be transferred to the county. And we know in populations sometimes that are limited financially are also limited in terms of mobility. Ashtabula County is the largest land area county in the state of Ohio. So this is a pretty reprehensible thought. This will have an incredibly negative effect on the population health of these small urban centers within a large rural county. And I can't imagine that those cities and those other counties that I read off are really thinking much differently. The other thing that is interesting, because I was reading that from the Ohio Township Association, I did send that to council so they can see their summary. But the biggest thing that I would tell everybody is those costs are borne by the city of Conneaut for its residents. As those are folded in there for the county at large, the rest of the county is going to end up paying more taxes because it is now going to be entirely the county. So townships and villages will suffer a financial impact from these that maybe aren't necessarily entirely theirs because they will be absorbing the population of Conneaut. So, sometimes it flows both ways, and those expenses are paid for by the city of Conneaut, and we've been very proud at the quality of care that our health department's been able to provide and service our health department's been able to provide. It would be a shame to see that thrown away amidst of a political fight between Republicans fighting over the mantle of who's in charge. I think that's does not come with a thought from the populations that they serve, and I would condemn it with the absolute strongest language possible.
Okay. Yes, as we've seen in recent years, coming out of the state, this is just another boneheaded move from the state legislature and the director of health at the state level to try to wrestle control of our local health departments away from local entities and consolidate it all at the state level. So I agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Hockaday's comments. There's no need for this political gamesmanship. And it's going to affect a number of counties quite negatively. So.
Same with me. I agree 100% with what Mr. Hockaday said. I agree 100% with this ordinance. It's just astounding to me that this is even, that we're talking about this. Like, I thought when I first heard it, it was a joke. Like, this can't be true. So whatever we can do to support this ordinance and hopefully oppose House Bill 110, please do call your state officials, local, even county officials, and let them know that you oppose losing your local health department. Because I can't even imagine with this year of the pandemic what we would have done without our local health department. It's like I can't even imagine what a worse state would be in right now if we didn't have them. And like Mr. Hockaday alluded to, they do so much more for our town than just vaccinations to keep us healthy. So please voice your opposition for this House bill.
Mr. Hockaday, is the board able to voice any concern or able to address it also?
The health department board?
Yeah, the health department board as a
Yes, and
as a
absolutely.
body.
Absolutely. And they have, I know they've had some internal discussions with ODH about the impact to communities. I can tell you, I don't believe our county health department is too excited at the specter of having to absorb 50% of the county's population into their system because they're already struggling to serve in a global pandemic what they have now. They've not had the same level of resources that Ashtabula City and Conneaut City's health departments have had in combating that and distributing vaccines and so on and so forth. So to then also take over for vital statistics, all the restaurants, septic tanks, it is quite a bit of work. We do it very efficiently here. We only have one full-time employee, but we do have a staff of 4. And we've done very well in mitigating costs to our consumers and our citizens. But as we pass that upwards, those efficiencies will be lost.
And just the timeliness of getting what we need, like you said, having to go to Jefferson, our county seat, for everything practically.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine.
So all birth certificates, death certificates, burials, licenses, and so on and so forth that are all handled here locally, that would all migrate to Jefferson.
Any other comments on this resolution? Hey, Ms. O'Connor, would you please read the whereases into the minute, please?
Whereas Substitute House Bill 110 contains language which would abolish health districts in cities with populations of less than 50,000. Whereas a drastic measure of change such as this in the middle of this global COVID-19 pandemic will be detrimental to the health and wellness of the Conneaut City community. Whereas city and county health departments need to have both legislative and financial support from the legislature to address major public health problems like the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Whereas the Council of the City of Conneaut recognizes the Conneaut Health Department is a first-rate health department that enjoys the support and the trust of the Conneaut community. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the City of Conneaut respectfully requests that the language regarding the abolishment of health districts in cities with populations of less than 50,000 be removed from Substitute House Bill 110, and that standalone legislation be introduced to allow adequate time to address the potential fiscal impact this would have on municipalities that currently comprise general health districts. That the Section 2, that the City of Conneaut herein recognizes the unsurpassable services provided by the Conneaut Health Department and expresses its deepest appreciation to the board, its commissioner, Nichelle Blood, and staff. And Section 3, that the clerk of this council is hereby authorized and directed to forward a certified copy of this resolution to the Conneaut Board of Health, Ohio House of Representatives, Robert Cupp, Speaker of the House, and Sarah Fowler Arthur, State Representative.
Okay. And with that, is there a motion to proceed?
I'll make a motion to waive the 3 reading rule on resolution 2521.
There's a motion to suspend a 3 reading rule on resolution 2521. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Ledford?
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah, Mr. Kozeski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Moiseo, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
I'd like to make a motion to act on resolution 25-21.
Motion to act on resolution 2521. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Emery.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah, Mr. Kozeski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, resolution 2521 is passed, and clerk, see that a copy of that is sent to the state forthwith. Okay, that concludes our ordinances and resolutions for this evening. Move on to unfinished and old business. Hearing none, miscellaneous business. Miscellaneous business going once. Okay. No miscellaneous business. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Ms. Ledford, is there a second?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mrs. McBoy.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff.
Yes.
Yes, there he goes. Mr. Kozeski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McBoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, City Council for April 26, 21 is adjourned. Thank you all.
Good night, everyone.
Have a good night.